Are you in HR and are tired of HR having a negative reputation? And is a part of you curious why and actually want to improve that reputation? Then you'll want to tune into this episode as an HR executive shares her insights on how she effectively supports organizations and actually makes an impact. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of The Leader Within. Today, I'm excited to introduce Cassandra Rose. She's a global HR executive who has over 15 years of HR experience, having held roles at multi-billion-dollar global brands and unicorn startups. Cassandra has developed proven strategies which positively impact the well-being of employees, all while guiding organizations committed to DE&I to embed equitable practices. As a recognized industry thought leader, Cassandra has contributed to numerous Forbes HR Council articles and leading HR podcasts. So I'm excited to have her share her experience with you. Well, welcome, Cassandra. Can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered your passion or your niche?
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm so happy to be part of the honored guests that you have here. And thank you for even having this platform. I don't feel like, or I should say, I feel like HR has definitely been getting its due in the last couple of years in a way that it hasn't. So thank you for continuing to shine a light on the industry. In terms of your question around, what are some things I think about? I'd have to say that I'm just really impressed at the fact that I ended up in HR. As most children, when you go into kindergarten, you're like, I want to be a human resource professional. Forget being an astronaut or president. That's what I want to do. But all joking aside, I actually really had a passion around going into the legal profession. One of the things that I've always been attracted to is around advocacy. How can I defend other people, support other people, do things that help other people, honestly, to breathe a little easier in this life? And so I always had that in mind throughout high school and college. I was a business major, B1 minor, because I thought about possibly going into business management and business law. And I graduated from college in 3 years pretty quickly. Half of that was trying to just avoid enormous student loan debt. Right. And I decided to take some time off since I had almost like a bonus year and became an inner city missionary. And I really loved that work. It really resonated with, again, those themes of advocacy and supporting my fellow human being, and almost pivoted into ministry work and going down that path. And then my student loans were like, no, you need to pay us back. So I ended up getting a lot of HR temp roles. And I realized, I was like, oh, wait, here I just spent the last 3 years building up this academic acumen in business. And I can still do all that passionate work of advocacy and support through the HR function. And so for the last almost 20 years, I've really dedicated a lot of time to this discipline, not just in my, as we would say, 9-to-5 job, but getting a master's degree so I could have a better academic understanding of the field, making sure that I stayed relevant, getting certifications, continuing education, and then contributing back, putting out thought pieces and contributing even in this forum to things that I've observed, things that I've seen, not just for the HR practitioner, but also for employees so that they better know how to interact with us. Because I think people don't realize all that an HR professional can bring to your work experience.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I think you have such a cool background and you did such a great job of bringing us on that journey. And one thing that I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper on is you mentioned that not everyone really understands the role of HR because depending on the size of the organization, the industry, whether it's union/non-union, there's like so many layers to like our role in itself. And I think one of, I don't know if I want to say misconception or the perception that is developed is that HR is for the company and not for the people versus what you just described is opposite. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been able to kind of work with an organization that truly sees HR as for the people and for the company?
Yeah, I think one of the trends that I've noticed that make content go viral on platforms like TikTok or Instagram is I'm going to be the person that no longer gatekeeps information, right? And so something that you will probably find with, 5 minutes of a Google search, people are putting out and just saying, hey, did you know this? And so when I think about the employee experience and what HR does for them, it's only when you engage do you feel like the gatekeeping stops. So if I am a new employee, maybe this is my first time working at a full-time job. Right? I get hit with orientation, maybe some trainings, and I never have to interact with human resources unless something happens. And then once that thing happens, it's like, why didn't no one tell me? I didn't know I could have this level of support. I had to get to the end of my rope, an extreme situation to have this literally pool of resources provided to me. What I like to share with people is that it's there and we're hungry to support that. HR did start out as for the business, by the business, for the business only. It was put in there to make sure people got paid, we were reporting absences, and that was it. It was really an administrative function, almost how people may think of finance sometimes. But similar to a CFO who now has to forecast and be forward thinking and be strategic, that's what HR had to morph into. And I would say for the last 25 to 40 years, if I want to be super generous, that's literally how the HR function has evolved. And so instead of us just being this reactive thing that if the business needs something, you need more people, we're going to get more people. It's like, how can we partner with the business to then create a culture that supports employees thriving? And so once I am centering an employee thriving means that all these other business things can occur. Now you have a different HR function that is for the people, by the people. And for the people are the people who are leading the business all the way up to the CEO and even board members. And for the most early person talent, for interns, right? You are coming in and we want to make sure that you thrive. Even if we know that you won't stay with us longer than 8 weeks, we want to know that you have been bettered by the experience you're having with us.
I love that approach because I think when it comes to individuals who are there short term, whether it's through a temporary contract or as a student, not all employers think the way you do, where it's like, how do we leave them better off than when they first walked in, right? Because that is how your brand is carried forward, right? And so for you, thinking back to when you first started your career in HR to now, what is maybe one thing that has helped you successfully develop a partnership with the business, right? Because usually it's like, if you can't even get the employees paid, we don't care about your strategy. So
Sure.
yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, when I think about the shift, even for me, because it's very easy to get lost in the process. Like sometimes we create processes that actually restrict the flow of business or the flow of work. Because any organization requires some people function, right? So when you're creating a process that restricts the flow of work versus enables it, you're doing the wrong thing. And I believe in always giving people recommendations. I don't tell people what to do. I present them with a set of facts. I tell them what I believe will be the best course of action based on the facts that they gave me. So when a leader's like, I don't feel like our people are engaged, I'm like, okay, that sounds like a problem. Here's my thesis statement.
Yeah.
Right? Why do you not feel like they're engaged? And let them fill in those facts for me. They're not working enough hours, the quality of work isn't where it needs to be. Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I want to solve for those things. Right now, I have that person bought into what I'm about to say. I want to solve for lack of engagement, not enough productivity, poor work products. What are the trainings that have been provided to these people? How do we actually give constructive feedback? Where are they mentored so that way the deficits that we see, is it something that we need to train and it's going to cost us X amount of money and X amount of time and we're willing to have that much time and money invested? Or does that mean we need to up level our talent? Maybe we need a stronger leader. Maybe there aren't enough people to get this work done. And even if everyone worked 24 hours, 7 days a week, you would still be experiencing your problem. Right. So I can give you a recommendation. Recommendation A is it's going to cost you 10 times more and you're going to have to increase salary because now you know overtime. Recommendation 2 is that you take more off their plate and figure out where else in the business it makes more sense for this work to either be co-owned or just delegated to. So that way you can actually enable your people to do the work that's needed to get done. Or 3, we need new talent. Maybe what we brought these people on to do isn't truly what they're skilled at. That doesn't make them bad people. That doesn't make them disloyal. That doesn't mean they're not productive. They really, truly are not a good fit. And we can take the time to figure that out later.
I can appreciate that you take a collaborative approach because that way the walls don't go up for a leader when you walk in and you're like, you need to do this. And they're like, no, I don't. And then they go do the opposite. Right? And I guess we've all probably, most HR professionals at one point or time have encountered a leader comes in and they're like, I just fired someone. You're like, oh no, like, did you follow protocol and all the other stuff, right? So for you, if you've encountered a leader where they continue to just make you a firefighter instead of a true partner, how have you approached those relationships so that you stop having to be a firefighter and you're like, okay, let's go into fire prevention mode instead?
Angela, I love this. So you know what? You just showed me HR professionals are so multifaceted. We do become firefighters like we promised we would be in kindergarten. So thank you for showcasing that. One of the things that I do for managers who sometimes they're well-intentioned, but they execute then aim, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And so I really do what we call it in, right? I'm not going to call you out and say, hey, you're doing these things wrong. And yeah, I'm putting the process before the person because that person needs HR too. Here are the reasons why by you continuing to have this behavior, you're adding more risk to the company, not to me personally. You didn't personally offend me, right? But by letting someone go and not letting HR know and not following the process, they may sue us for wrongful termination, which requires then for you to now go sit in court or mediation for the next 6 months. And it's going to cost now $60,000, or we're going to charge your line of business for that cost. Or here's another thought. You can let me know a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, where you feel like this relationship, this working relationship just isn't working. And we could try to think through solutions as to, should this person be rehomed? They should go to a different department. Did we actually try every convention of getting them up to speed or coaching that could make them work? And if we have to exit this person, how do we do so with dignity in a way that's respectful to them, that allows them to offboard with dignity intact, and we can now go on and replace them, but they're not likely to come sue us because they feel like they've been wrong. Right? These are the things I can offer you. And then if you're still ignoring all of that, yeah, I'll have to escalate it. But my hope is in having that conversation and letting that person know I'm here to support what you need to get done. But I'm also here to support that person. And if we can find a winning combination of that, and sometimes that still means the person is exited, but we're doing it in a way that centers dignity, I think that's the fairest way.
That's a really great call on the dignity part. And even when you said it's people over process essentially, right? Because it's just like, so help me understand. So what made you kind of do that? And then now let's explore our options instead of coming from like a reprimand
Right.
kind of tone. I think that kind of hopefully changes their behavior a little bit. And given your extensive leadership experience, what would you say is one of your biggest epiphanies to date?
I had to take that deep breath because I feel like I've had so many. I would say my top and probably North Star is that people are living their lives with us. I spent a considerable amount of time in a center of excellence around benefits at several different companies. And what I loved about being in the benefits sphere is that you were touching people at their highest highs and sometimes at their when someone was getting married and they're like, hey, I want to add, my spouse or domestic partner to my benefits, right? We're talking about wedding planning. We're talking about their honeymoon. That was fun to get into and still do the work. I could have easily said, hey, go to the system, put the stuff in, right? But I'm engaging this person as a human. When they're having a baby, when they're thinking about going on vacation and they don't remember how many carryover days, right? We're experiencing people's lives. We're touching them. And your 5-second to 5-day interaction with them can actually contribute to that. But even in their lows, I've had to process employee deaths and speak to their spouses who I never had to have a conversation with before and have to slowly and empathetically explain to them, what does this mean? Do they get pensions? Or it's how to be processed with life insurance, right? People who, are going through tough times with medical conditions that they never imagined that they would be in, and they're trying to stay at work, but they have to go out on leave, sometimes for 2-3 weeks at a time, or even longer term. And knowing that I'm, supporting them in some of the lowest moments of their lives. So yes, we can all look at it as a process or payment, and there should be still more advocacy around how these things are distributed, making sure that, low wage earners are getting the same level of benefits that high wage earners are. There's still more work to be done there. I don't want to pretend that doesn't exist. But in those moments, as an HR practitioner, when you're literally helping someone through a policy or a benefit or a process impact their lives, what a treasure and a gift that is. And when I approach it that way, despite what is going on in my day, despite the firefighting that has happened, what an amazing moment that is.
I can appreciate where you're coming from in terms of the highs and the highs and the lows and lows. I think that's the best way for you to develop a relationship without constantly having to be on the floor as an HR professional. When in the moments that it counts, you are empathetic and you are human with them. And I guess one of the things that kind of came to mind as we were chatting through that is, how do you help leaders adopt a similar mindset, right? Because sometimes their plates are so full that they kind of forget about that human element and that these individuals are with us for 8 to 10 hours, depending on your shift pattern per day.
Yeah. Well, let's, address the other elephant in the room, which is a lot of times leaders become leaders by default and not necessarily by intention. And what I mean by that is, even if you're a great contributor, you've done really good work and you get promoted because your work ethic and your work product is exceptional. Like exceptional. Guess what? Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're a good people leader. So sometimes that's by default. Because you're good at a skill, people think all of a sudden you're going to be magically good at managing people. And then sometimes you're the last person standing, let's be honest, right? Like people, your boss quit, this person quit. And so the only person that has somewhat institutional knowledge and one day greater than whoever came in next is you. And so you are now the leader. So I think some of that overwhelm truly comes from not having that support structure, that bridge of going from individual contributor to supporting a team. Even if it's one more person that is replying to you, no one has truly coached you. So how are you going to now emulate that behavior for someone else? And so when I am working with first-time leaders or leaders of enormous teams, right? Even if you're a great leader, how do you lead a team of 60 through 8 people or 5 people or whoever your direct reports? Just really thinking through how do you touch different layers? I help them create a framework around like, what are you responsible for and what are they responsible for? And always telling them, remember, it is not your job to be the magic. It is not your job to be the best employee ever, the best manager ever, and then be the best version of yourself of what you love to do outside of these doors. So if we're thinking through how can I be effective as a leader and bring empathy into my leadership style, it's really to support the people in what they need. And I know that sounds very high level, so let me give you some call to action practical things. If you're leading a team of 2 people, just 2. And you're like, how can I support these 2 people? I have all this work on my plate. They have work and they should know what to do. All right, pause. You should be asking them specific questions of what do you need help with? Instead of me just assuming that I have to help you with everything you do, let me reverse the conversation. I should always be the last step for them. I want to stop obstacles from getting in your way. I want to support the ideas that you have. And if you reverse engineer a lot of that thinking, you'd be shocked at how your people will show up for you. Everyone, I truly believe this. Everyone shows up to work with the intention that I want to do good work. Some people want to do exceptionally great work, and those are the innovators, and thank God for them. But some people want to show up, do good work, and go home. And those people are as critical to me as somebody else. So if we know that everyone's starting from a good place of intention, your job is then to say, how can I support you? And sometimes that's hard because if you're the leader, you feel like, I need to be out in front. I need to be doing all these things. But if you're like, I'm going to be in the back if you need me, because I want you to be out front. I want you to have the career. I want you to do the work. That can feel a little painful. It can feel a little vulnerable. But I think that vulnerability lends itself to empathy. Because now when you're seeing that your people are doing good work and you can let them voice what they need from you, now you have the question of, do I actually have what it takes to support them versus them supporting my needs?
I love that you're like, hey, ask them what they need because oftentimes they have the answer if you're willing to listen. And from like capacity development perspective, whether it's team capacity and or leadership capacity, I think some leaders have difficulties with delegating and developing capacity as okay, so what shouldn't be on my plate? Like I need to let go of that, right?
Right.
So given your success as a leader, how did you kind of get comfortable with being like, I'm gonna let that person stretch a little bit so I can slowly take this one off my plate?
Yeah, Angela, I actually went running in the opposite direction. I am a big believer in deep sea diving. And what I mean by that is I throw you all the way out there. You say that you're great at presentations. Awesome. I have a presentation coming up next month. You're going to run the lead on it. What? Absolutely. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to give you all these things. I'm going to set up milestones. So it's not like, hey, in 30 days, I'm just going to show up and either completely criticize or completely love what you did. I'm going to make sure that we have the right expectation set for each other. However, I'm not going to meddle because you said that you're exceptionally good at this. And I feel that any direction I give actually robs both of us of the opportunity to see what you've got. So 15 days from now, let's see a draft. 5 days after that, let's see a final draft. Let's run through it. Let's have ideas. And in the between, I am your lighthouse. I am that one point that, swim to shore, right? So yes, it feels deep and emotion. Yes, you may be like, I wish you were more collaborative. If that's what you need, now again, it's my vulnerability. If that's what you need, I will step up as a leader for that. And then it's my failure if I don't step up for you in that way. Versus, hey, I have this presentation. I need you to take lead on it. We're going to meet 2 hours a day, every day. I'm going to tell you bit by bit what to. Then you're robbing that person not just of their creativity, but somewhat of their dignity. because that almost feels like I don't trust you and that my vision is what you need to do. And that's where sometimes disengagement does come from. It's just like, well, if you're not going to let me have a voice, I'm just going to do what you want me to do. And when you don't specifically and explicitly tell me what to do, I'll come.
I love the visual of a lighthouse because then it also creates opportunity for the individual to take ownership of what it is that they need. And I think that's so key when it comes to your career, because even going back to earlier where you're like, hey, you can be one of the best at what you do. You may get promoted into leadership roles. Other times, like, unfortunately, you're not the shiniest person in the room for you to get that promotion. So given your success with your career progression, how did you get good at advocating for yourself so that you can kind of be at the forefront when opportunities came up?
Some of it, Angela, was scars. And what I mean by that is learning the hard way. And so I would be like, just like school, put my head down, do all the right things. People will notice me. And I saw other people getting promoted, and I saw other people getting amazing compensation increases that they probably did deserve. But I was being left behind. And I had a very honest conversation with my manager, probably 4 years too late. I was like, hey, I just don't understand. I feel like I'm doing all this. Yeah, you're great. Doing all this work, but I'm not getting promoted. And my manager had a very honest answer for me. This job will never go past that, right? This is the height of that job. Even no matter how amazing you are, this job will never get a promotion because that's just how we scoped it. And that turned on a light bulb for me. I need to be asking better questions. What is a career path here? What opportunities are here, right? And so if I want to chase a certain title, if I want to chase a certain dollar amount that to me makes me feel like I'm succeeding and growing, then I need to ask the questions, does this, the thing that I'm doing today, lead me over there? And if it doesn't, that's fine. That doesn't make my manager a bad person, right? But that means that I need to move on. And so what I've done now in going into new jobs is, hey, this is the job scope. This is a job description that I saw, that I was attracted to, that you hired. If I do all these things, where does that lead me? And it's okay if you don't have the answer today. Totally fine. But we're going to have this conversation consistently, at least once a quarter, so you can let me know what success looks like and how that transforms my career. And I feel like every organization owes you that, because maybe the answer is, guess what? That is the top of the job. It's never going to change. And the only way you can move is to move sideways and not up. And for some people, that's fine. You may be in a season of life where you're a caregiver, maybe of young children, maybe of your parents, maybe of your plants. Okay. And you just want a job where you come in, do good work, get fair compensation, and go home.
Thank you for sharing your approach on that. And another question that came out of that is developing the right relationships without overstepping your boss in a way where it would offend them. What did that look like as you were mapping out your career progression?
Yeah, I've had the exceptional fortune of having really good managers who would do skip levels for me. For people who may not be used to that concept, it's you get to meet with my manager for 30 minutes or an hour on a consistent enough basis, right? So I'm already getting that visibility and just letting them know like what I'm interested in, what work I do. I think sometimes it's also raising your hand, doing the thing that scares you. Is there someone who's going out on leave, maybe a parental leave, and we're like, hey, I'd love to take over some of their responsibilities for the amount of time that they're out. What does that look for me? And that's another way for other leaders to see what you're capable of. So I think when faced with the fact that you may have a manager who is happy to put a spotlight on you, or maybe not so much, just thinking through how are other creative ways. Because I've noticed when people have somewhat stepped out of bounds and gone above their manager, how that can sometimes blow back and not be seen as positive, be seen as, hey, you should have been going through your manager. But I think if you do the things that sometimes are outside of your job description, whether that's participate within an employee resource group and lead an event, right? It doesn't have to be this long-term, do 2 jobs for 2 years and, so we'll eventually see you. What are some opportunities that are short-term, but high visibility that allow you to flex a different muscle or flex the muscles that you do have to other people so they can really see that you're more than just the current role?
I really appreciate that about that high visibility work piece, right? Especially if it's in alignment with what you are ultimately trying to achieve. That's authentic, and any leader would probably be like, yeah, like please take that off my plate as an example. And I guess as we slowly wrap up our conversation, when it comes to this question, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What does it take to unleash the potential of individuals and or organizations?
When I think about unleashing, and this is something I'm actually journeying in for myself and going into, 20 years of being HR, I think it's tapping into the thing that you're best at. I think a lot of us have chameleon like skills. You want me to do payroll? Okay, I can figure that out. You want me to do training and development, right? Like I know, and I've been a practitioner of one where you just do everything. And so you sometimes feel burnt out because you're doing everything. And I think the burnout comes from not knowing, what am I truly good at? And how do I make sure that's always leading? Or I would say millennials for the most part, have done this amazing job of saying, I should be happy at work, right? I shouldn't be just happy with a paycheck. But when I go into work and I do work that's fulfilling, the feedback loop should not just give me compensation and, financial reward, but it should also make me feel good about who I am. And though I believe that every job can't give you that, every job can't be satisfying. When you were a babysitter in high school, I'm pretty sure you didn't skip home saying, man, that's the most satisfying job I'll ever have. It's all downhill from here, right? And so I don't think an employer's commitment to you should be to always make you happy. But I do think that they should help you figure out, what are you exceptionally good at? And I will use my personal experience as my exceptionally good skill is advocacy. That means that I could have worked in nonprofit. I could have gone into continue to be a missionary or done ministry work, because advocacy was always at the foundation of those decisions. That's why I felt fulfilled when I was getting practically paid nothing or paid very, very well. And so when I go into a new workplace, into a new job, I'm always saying, how can I advocate better in this job? When it was benefits, it's how can I get better benefits for my people, for my employee? How can I make sure the benefits we have are properly being used? They're optimized by the people who probably are most vulnerable, or who just honestly don't even know that they can come to HR and not be scared of any fight. How can I proactively reach out to them as a head of HR? Advocacy. What can I make sure I'm doing when creating an offboarding process to make sure that dignity is centered, and that whether people are leaving voluntarily or involuntarily, they don't feel like they were robbed of something, or that we've forgotten about them on their way out, or that's what we're about to do. So when I can bring forward advocacy in the work that I do, despite the firefighting, despite a lot of the deficits that we're all human, there's always going to be an organization that has more work to do, I still feel fulfilled. And that fulfillment makes me feel happy. That's what I would say is unleashing your leadership. Find what your theme is. What are you extremely good at? That should be a transferable skill. And then apply it as far and as fast and as wide and vast as you need to.
I love that. And I'm excited to see how you're going to grow coming out of that and what you're going to be doing as a result of discovering. It's like, hey, like this is the foundation of everything. And I think because you were able to do that for yourself, how it's going to impact the people that you continue to lead and impact as a result of that. So my last question to you is, what's one thing that you're working on that you're excited about?
I am actually working on an HR book. And so I feel that there's a lot of things out there of, being a practitioner who resides in a Black female body has opened a lot of doors and eyes for me in terms of what it's like to occupy space that's not necessarily occupied by people who look like me, be in a position of power, because even as the most junior HR person, right, I have power in terms of how policies are applied, making sure that if I'm seeking exception for someone, I'm making sure that it's for all the right reasons. And I just want to be able to share some of those truths that I've discovered throughout the different organizations that I work. So really excited about putting something like that together.
Well, congratulations on getting that book started, and excited to help promote it however I can. And thank you again for sharing your insights and your stories today. I really appreciate it. And to everyone else that's tuned into another episode, thank you so much for your time and attention. It means more to me than you'll know. And I can't wait to stay in touch with you on my next episode. Till then, stay safe.